The last passenger at King's Cross. It was nearly midnight when Sophie sprinted into King's Cross Station. Her breath puffed in the cold air, her footsteps echoing loudly against the empty marble floor. The announcements had stopped. The last train home had already departed. Sophie cursed under her breath, pacing near Platform 9. The vast station felt lifeless, the kind of stillness that seemed unnatural even for that hour. The clock above the platform ticked ominously. 11:57. She sat down on a worn wooden bench, shivering slightly, not from the cold, but from a creeping sense that she was not entirely alone. Somewhere, far down the platform, she thought she heard the faint scrape of shoes against the stone floor. Turning her head, Sophie saw her, an elderly woman in a tattered gray coat and bonnet, hunched over near the edge of the platform. Her frail form was illuminated in the pale glow of the station lights, and she seemed to be muttering to herself. "Hello?" Sophie called, her voice cutting through the silence. The woman didn't respond. Sophie hesitated, but then walked cautiously closer. Something felt off. The woman's clothes looked impossibly old, as if she had stepped straight out of a photograph from the Victorian era. Her hands trembled as she clutched a battered leather handbag. "Are you waiting for the train?" Sophie asked, her voice softer now. The woman stopped muttering and turned slowly. Sophie's heart clenched as she met the woman's face, or what remained of it. Empty, dark sockets stared back at her, where eyes should have been. The grin that spread across the old woman's face was inhumanly wide, her teeth jagged and yellow. "It never came for me," the woman whispered, her voice raspy and unnaturally cold. "But it's coming for you." The station lights flickered, plunging the platform into brief darkness. When they sputtered back on, the woman was gone. Sophie staggered back, her pulse racing. She turned to run, but froze. The air suddenly felt heavy, suffocating. From the dark tunnel, the glow of an oncoming train appeared. But something was wrong. It made no noise, no screeching wheels or rumbling tracks. It floated forward, the windows of its carriages glowing faintly. Sophie watched in terror as the train came to a halt in front of her. Its doors slid open with a whispering hiss. Inside, the seats were filled with silent passengers, all pale-faced with hollow eyes, fixed unblinking on her. Their mouths hung open as though screaming, but no sound came. A shadowy figure in a long conductor's uniform stepped onto the platform. His hat obscured his face, but Sophie could see his skeletal hands extending toward her. "Your turn," he said, his voice echoing unnaturally in the empty station. Paralyzed by fear, Sophie felt herself stepping forward as if pulled by an invisible force. Her mind screamed to stop, but her body moved of its own accord. She crossed the threshold and boarded the ghostly train. The doors slid shut behind her, and the lights on the platform flickered again. By morning, King's Cross Station had returned to its usual bustle. Commuters hurried past, oblivious to the old-fashioned bonnet lying neatly folded on the bench by Platform 9. It would remain there, unnoticed, until the next last passenger arrived.